Hello, welcome to Laura Live, and today we're going to talk about sequential processing or working memory and why it's so important and how Americans and actually English-speaking people in general have a completely false, wrong, horrifically terrible idea of intelligence. In English, we say someone is smart. We'll say he's really smart. In Asian languages, they say he got smart. He has become very smart. They have the idea, which is the correct idea, that your brain can improve its efficiency. And so we're going to talk about how we can do this very easily with our children, actually with ourselves too. We can make ourselves and our children can become smarter. Now, if you look at an IQ test, 90% or something of what an IQ test does, or maybe not 90%, but 75%, is all about working memory. It's seeing something, remembering it, and then saying what you saw. Either it could be puzzle configurations or lists of numbers. It's about measuring your working memory. And in English, we'll say someone is quick. Oh, he's a quick study. He's really quick. Someone who is smart is considered fast. So there's a component of being able to go through lots of information in your head at a quick pace so that you come to the right answer. You know, when they've done studies with gifted people versus neurotypical people, and they found that if the gifted person is given enough time, they come to the right answer. If the neurotypical person is given enough time, they come to the right answer. And so gifted literally is just a time thing. You get to the right answer faster than somebody else. Your brain moves faster. Your internal metronome, so to speak, is just on high. And so how can we, now if you have a child with special needs, we've talked about this before where we'll talk about autism first. People with autism, their brain does not naturally get rid of the excess neural pathways. Whereas a typical person, our brain removes the excessive ones and just stays with the superhighways. So it's people on the spectrum have almost like footpaths all over their brain, where a neurotypical person will have highways and a gifted person will have superhighways, like freeways, like boom. And so we have 30% or something. When they were first diagnosing autism, I just saw a presentation on this just last week, of children on the spectrum have macrocephaly. Their heads are bigger, their brains are bigger because they have all these footpaths. So I didn't know that 30%, but this doctor was saying early on that maybe in the 80s they saw that was something that they saw. But that's why, it's because their brains are bigger. And Typical Grandin showed me her brain scans, and she just has lots more going on than the average person, just lots more paths in her brain. So we don't want our brain to have a bunch of footpaths. It just takes too long to get the answer that way. And that's why our kids will have a delay when you're talking to them, because their brain is going to Wichita and back instead of just going straight to what you want them to say. And so we want to encourage the brain to use these superhighways, and we want to encourage the speed, and we want to encourage them to be able to hold on to many things at once in their head. Now, a lot of parents will say, "Oh, my child's working memory is fabulous. He can memorize whole books. He can memorize whole movie scripts." That's not working memory. That's associative memory, and it's almost like a seesaw. The higher your associative memory, the lower your working memory. I don't know why that is, but that's the way it works. So if you have these kids who have these superpower memories, who can remember all of these movie scripts and just script like crazy, usually their working memory is terrible. It's like they have a 1-year-old working memory when they're 12 years old. So we have to work on the working memory. Now, before the magic of computers, we would have therapists that would sit in front of kids with colored blocks and put the colored blocks out and then cover them, and the kids had to remember what the colors they were in what order and put them in the same order that they saw. And it was very time consuming for a parent or therapist to do this. Now with computers, we can do it with a computer. And there are a lot of working memory programs out there. GemIIni has one that I specifically am partial to, and I'll tell you why. You can control it. So you can control, first, there's five different visual presentations. So you've got numbers, colors, you've got animals, and like little kids like the animals better. So it's like a puzzle for them. It's more fun. You can control how long the viewer is presented the information, how many seconds. So typically you want to get it down to +1. So if you're going to ask them to remember 4 objects, you're going to want to present it for 5 seconds. That's when they're good at it. You can start by letting them see it for 30 seconds at first and then work it down. It also gives a little ta-da when they get it right, which is fun. And you can do either auditory or visual, and you need to do both. And you can also dial in how much information you want to present. So let's say you have a child with a very low working memory and you're just wanting them to see 2 things on the screen. You can, with the GemIIni sequential processing game, you can have them just see 2 things on the screen. So they'll have to take those 2 things and put them in the right order. And then you can add one. And then you could add another one up to having 9 objects to choose from. And so the way it works is that you're going to select how many objects you want to be shown on the screen, what kind of objects, whether colors, numbers, animals, clothing, and how long you want it to be there. And then it's just a game the student has to remember and then click on the ones in the right order. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story, personal story with my 7th child has dyslexia. He's only 4, and you're saying, how do we know, he says dyslexia? Well, my 6th child has it, and so I was looking for it, and you can actually diagnose it when they're pretty young. So we started doing the working memory with him game when he was late. Very bad, cobbler's children have no shoes. I started with him when he was 4, and he was only at a 2 for working memory. And this kid is smart. He should have been at a 5, and he was only at a 2 because of dyslexia. It's also just very taxing on working memory. And so every night before he goes to bed, I sit with him in bed next to him, and we play the working memory game. And at first I was doing it very traditionally, where he was seeing 2 objects and then giving him an extra second and then had to remember them. And I saw he was getting frustrated, so I added a few more seconds, and he got those. And then what I started realizing, and then I switched to numbers. He knows his numbers well by seeing them. What I realized was that for him to remember, because most dyslexics are auditory learners. I'm an auditory learner, I'm dyslexic too. That's very common. And that if he said aloud the numbers, he could remember them easily, where just looking at that, he had a hard time. So we're building up some scaffolding so that he can play the game and succeed at it, and then work his way down. So what I found is I gave him enough time so that he could say aloud each number. When I was watching, his recall was terrible. So when he saw a 1, he would go, it would finally come out the 1, but it was just like he couldn't get it out of his mouth. And then so I had to give him extra time, 3 times as much. So we were looking at 3 things on the screen. I gave him 12 seconds to be able to say them, just to recall them, to be able to say them. And every night his recall got a little faster. And so had I left it at 4 seconds, we would be back at a 2. He would have been very frustrated. But because I gave him all that time, and now I'm just working on him seeing the image and saying it. Seeing and saying it, because what was affecting was his reading. If you don't have a fast enough working memory, reading is very difficult, because especially when you're starting to read, you're sounding out each letter one at a time. If it takes you a long time to come out with the sound, let's say we're gonna do bat. If it takes you a long time to look at the b, and then you see the and the ah, and then you see the t, you still don't know what you said because it was too long when you said the first sound. You have to be able to go bat, fast. And so by using GemIIni with the numbers and having the children quickly say the numbers in a row, he's up to 5 now. And when he hit 5, it was that same day, because I also do his reading words with him. He was sitting next to me, and his reading words, he went through 87 words this fast. And before, it was it was so hard. I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. I'm going to be doing this GemIIni reading with this kid till he's 12. Dyslexia was that profound. When he got his working memory up to a 5, all the words just came out. Now, what does that mean for him going forward? Now, first off, let me just talk to you about the proof of this working memory thing. So to speak Chinese or any of the tonal languages where, you like Chinese, one word could mean 4 things depending on how you sing it. If you go up or you go down or you go up and down or you go flat, those 4 different meanings, very different meanings. And people, so when you're learning Chinese, when you're a little baby and you're growing up and you're hearing it, your brain has to listen to not only what the sound of the word is, but what the way they're singing it. And so your brain uses more thinking power. And so to be able to speak Chinese properly, you need a 10 working memory. Now, a 10 in English speakers is genius. A 10 in English speakers is gifted. It's probably the top 2% of the country. And those are all the people in the gifted program. Gifted program is 3%. So just by speaking Chinese, you're automatically a gifted American. Now, if you go into universities in the United States, there are a lot of Asians in there. A lot. Asians are known to do very well on tests. Amazingly well with tests. In fact, they've done studies and they found in college that people who get A's in college have a 10 working memory. And it goes all the way down. It's totally correlative. It doesn't help with creativity. It just helps with the recall of information. And so it's possible that, especially like in places like China, where you're learning Chinese, just learning to read takes so much effort because you have to memorize every single word separately. So thousands and thousands, you spend a lot of time memorizing characters, which also, by that early age, when you're memorizing all of these things, it helps your working memory. So they don't have a lot of time to be creative because they're spending a lot of time learning to read. But it's not like you don't have to choose one or the other. You can be both. You can be a creative genius. And that's what we want for our kids. So English is more creative. Part of the creative brain, but you only need a 5 working memory. No, a 6. You need a 6 working memory to properly speak English, to properly speak it. A 6. Now, Spanish is a super efficient language. You pronounce every single one of the letters in a word. It doesn't have these crazy like OUGH in English that is one sound for a bunch of letters. It doesn't do that. It's a very efficient language. Whoever designed it did a good job. It's easy to read. It's easy to write. No sight words. But you only need a 5 working memory to speak Spanish. So Hispanics who grew up speaking Spanish and come to this country to learn to speak English, it's very hard for them to learn because they have to literally amp up their working memory to be able to do it. And that's why some people, a lot of the Romance languages are like that, where Italian's another one. French is harder. French, I think you need a 7 working memory to be able to speak French because it's got a ton of silent letters and more complicated linguistic phonemic structure. So let's we're talking about a kid with autism, and he's been doing GemIIni and he knows all of Quick Start, but he's not using it in conversation. Now, why he'd use no? And if you flip flashcards in front of his face and he knows what they all are, he knows them all. He can play them all out. He can tell you what they are. He knows everything. But why is he not ever? I hear this all the time. My child can say anything, but he rarely talks. He'll talk, and if you ask him, but he won't just come out with sentences. It's all going on up here, and he's thinking about it. But working memory is the retrieval part, is the part that takes you from your brain, which you know, to get out your mouth. You know the feeling that you have when something's just on the tip of your tongue and you can't remember it? Like, what's that thing again? What's that word again? What's that word? You just can't think of it. And you know it's there, and if someone said it, you would know what it was. If someone hold a picture of it, you could probably say it, but that's the feeling that people with poor working memories have all the time. It's really annoying, isn't it? That feeling is so annoying, in fact, that you just forget about wanting to try to talk, because it's just, I just have to think about it, retrieve it. It's exhausting, and it's a pain in the neck, and it's just, why even bother? But the greatest thing is that we can exercise the working memory part of the brain without forcing them to remember a bunch of stuff or to say a bunch of stuff that they don't want to say, just by playing the game. And you make it very easy at first. First off, you're going to use numbers. There's only 9 numbers, so they only have to remember 9 things. It's not like every single thing they've ever learned they have to recall, just 9 things. And they get at recalling that. So you use a working memory game for numbers, and you have them say each one. Even if you start with 2, have them say, when they first see it, as fast as they can, they'll say 3, 6. And first it'll be 3, 9, 6. You know, it'll be like that, but it'll get faster and faster. And just by doing that, you will see their conversation skills improve because they'll be able to recall these things better. Don't work on trying to improve conversation skills until you get the working memory thing done, because you're just going to make them mad, make them frustrated, hate to talk, and you'll be going backwards. You want to make sure you're working on sequential processing first. And it doesn't take a lot of time. Ideally, in a perfect world, you're doing it for like 5, 10 minutes tops, 3 times a day. Ideally. I know with kids in school, that's hard. If, and we get the school on board, which more and more schools are coming on board with it, then you can have them do this twice a day in school. If, you know, the problem with American schools is that we don't have on-staff neurologists. If we had a developmentalist or a neurologist like on staff, they would be able to tell everybody, guys, you want your scores to go up? Working memory. Why do you think Singapore, and if you look at all the Asian countries' test scores, are so high? Because these people have crazy working memories. Crazy, crazy working memories. If every American had a 10 working memory, we would knock the socks off of every educational graph in the universe. And if schools understood that to make people smart, you don't just have to teach them a bunch of facts, because they don't remember them. They don't remember them. You have to remember the facts, or you may as well not even been taught in the first place. Every single class in school should start with 5 minutes of working memory practice. Everyone. If we did this in schools across the country, our test scores would double. And difficult subjects like calculus and advanced science, there's a lot of math, physics, and chemistry, would be like this, because you can hold more equations in your brain at the same time. It would be amazing. So, that's why Asians say you aren't born smart, you get smart. You become smart. Americans, because you are born with a certain amount of working memory. Some people are born with a high and some with low. And so as Americans, we think he's just born that way. He's just smart. He's always real smart when he was born. He's just born that way. Nope. You can change it. You can change it fast even. The difference I've seen with my 4-year-old in the last 3 months, unbelievable. And here, like I said, I knew this. I should have been having him do it since he was 2. Doing. That's why I'm talking about this now, because I just can't believe that I just started with him 3 months ago. It solved all my problems. Literally, it has solved the problem. He went from, and his behavior is directly correlative to his ability in school. So in school, the teacher has this great little chart. It goes from red at the bottom to purple at the top, and everybody starts at green in the middle at the beginning of the day. And if you are well behaved, you go up the ladder. If you're not well behaved, you go down the ladder. So parents can look every day when they pick their child from school and see how his behavior was. And I'm talking, and he has 3 classes. He has Chinese, Spanish, and English. And the Chinese and the Spanish teachers say he's amazing, he's fantastic, he's lovely, he gets all best marks. But the English teacher was always marking him down, so he was getting lower behavior grades. And I sat down and I said, what's going on? And I realized that the reading, it was so difficult for him that he was having behavior issues because he didn't want to do it. I can't do it. I don't like this. I don't want to do this. And he would just have a fit. Oops. There we go. He'd have a fit because he didn't want to do it. All of a sudden, since, as I told you, his reading just changed overnight when he got up to a 5, I'm going to the classroom. He's at the highest behavior score in the class. He's at purple, which we're just having purple parties at now. Oh my gosh, you did so well. This fantastic purple. Well, it was only because the curriculum was too challenging for his working memory before, and it was causing meltdowns. Now you think about all these kids having behavior problems in school. If school were easy, if school were a snap, if they got it like this and they could do it, I think they've been having behavior problems. How many gifted kids have behavior problems? I usually don't think we're going into the gate or the gifted programs at the school or the after school. You look, they're not the kids in detention. Because it's easy for them. They like it. They like going to school because they can do it easily. So, I think if we worked on working memory in school, we solve a lot of behavior issues too. Kids like to come to school. I just cannot tell you. My little guy was saying, I don't want to go to school today. It's too hard, Mommy. He can't wait to go to school. Books with him. He literally hid a book in his hat 2 days ago to school to show his teacher how he was reading. And it was just me spending 5 or 10 minutes at night with him before he went to bed. Now, who have a disability, who have a learning issue, dyslexia, even ADD, this is even more important. I really cannot tell you, this is going to make the difference in all of our kids' lives. It's going to. And I've seen lots of working memory games out there. GemIIni's, I think, is the best because you have so much control and variation. You can really you control so many aspects of the game that you make it easy for them at first. And you have to make it easy for them. If it's too hard, they won't like the game. They have to be able to succeed. And I think I'm going to make a special video on just the sequential processing tool and all the things you can do with it. Any of the remedial readers, if they did this in school, literally, instead of having your kids pull out for reading help, which as I'm talking to parents, it doesn't do anything because kill and drill does not work with dyslexia. It doesn't. Rather than having to do kill and drill with the SLP, so the SLP can go off and do something that's she's really having a big impact on, I would have the kids just do the working memory games on GemIIni. Just, okay, 15 minutes a day, you're pulling out, you're doing this game. That's what's going to make the biggest progress. And I talked to this great speech pathologist up in Canada, Ontario, Canada. He's a speech pathologist for 2 different school districts. Huge. One of them so big that it takes 8 hours to drive across the school district. It's how big it is. And there's very few speech therapists. And so they use this automated program for reading for dyslexia because they have a huge dyslexia problem too. And he's been yelling at the school saying, it's not going to work because their problem is working memory. You have to fix the working memory issues. But Americans do not understand, even doctors and therapists do not understand that it's fixable. I have literally had kids, lots of kids, hundreds, maybe thousands of kids, where the parents will say, well, yes, the school did assessments and we found that she has poor working memory. And I said, so what do they do for it? Oh, nothing, they don't treat it. I really think that people in this country think you can't treat it. I've come to the realization that the vast majority of educators and therapists don't know that you can actually fix it. And you can fix it so well that you can actually overcome the neurotypicals. It's just time. An average American used to have a 7-digit span. That's why phone numbers are 7 digits long. Because of the internet makes your working memory shorter. It destroys your working memory. Because of the internet, the average American has a 4. That is on the side of a cognitive impairment. It's bad. Just to overcome the internet, we should be doing working memory in schools. And I don't know if I don't need to scream this from the housetops if I can get to the president or head of Department of Education, somebody to let people know all of our problems are fixable, but none of them are if we don't solve the working memory. You can have Common Core. You can have the best teacher in the world. You can have the best curriculum in the world. You can have people spending 8 hours a day at school plus 8 hours of homework, all this stuff. If they have poor working memories, they'll forget it the next day. It's not going to do anything. The problem with American education is very simple to solve. It's working memory. And I talk to people all the time. I was born with a really high working memory, just naturally. I never had to work at it. I just have really strong working memory. And I remember, I have this reputation of just pulling facts out of the top of my head. Like, how do you remember that? How do you remember that fact? And I said, I'll be with friends from high school say, oh, well, I learned that in high school. You were sitting right next to me. You learned it too. And what I came to realize as I grew up and later on is that it's not that learned anything differently than other people. I just remember it. Other people don't remember it. But they could if they worked at it, if they worked on their working memory. Now, because of working with my 4-year-olds, I'm working on my working memory. And I think that's also when you start getting dementia, working memory is the first thing to go. Where you just, that feeling, what's that called? My grandmother, when she was getting into her 90s, when she couldn't remember something, she would say, I'm not going to tell you. Because she didn't want to admit that she couldn't remember. She just, I'm not going to tell you. Well, if we as adults, especially after menopause, which that's where I am right now, my memory was just going to heck. And I thought, oh, great, I'm getting Alzheimer's. And I started doing research. No, it's part of menopause. If we adults had a culture of spending 5 minutes a day before we go to bed working on our working memory, I bet we could delay the onset of Alzheimer's or make it much less potent, I guess. It's just something that we just need to do as a culture. I don't know if I can get to the First Lady and say, can you make this your thing? The working memory for Americans? I bet she's got a massive working memory. Maybe get old Michelle Obama. She's not doing anything right now. Maybe I can get her and Laura Bush together. Yeah. I don't know how I'm going to get them. Maybe Laura Bush, because I don't want this to be a partisan thing. This is just an American thing. Get Laura Bush and Michelle Obama to do a working memory campaign for Americans. Anybody out there know the Obamas or the Bushes? Let me know. It really is the key to our whole education crisis. It's right there. Okay, so that is all for Laura Live today. Don't forget to share and to subscribe and really share the heck out of this one because literally everybody needs to know this. It's so important. We all need to be doing this. It can change the course of your life. It can change the course of our country if we just were smarter. And smart is fast, remember. Smart and fast. All right.